and welcome back to another episode of The Pilot Principle, the podcast where we take a look at just the first episode of a series, aka the pilot, and then use it to decide if we should watch the entire series or at least the second episode, because sometimes it just be like that, you know? Follow if you are not already following, and comment what you'd like me to review next if you're not already commenting, because today's episode was suggested by one of you lovely listeners. So, at your request, I shall be reviewing the pilot episode of FX's new drama series, Clipped. And this is what we have as a series synopsis for Clipped. The scandalous story of LA's other basketball team, based on ESPN's podcast, The Sterling Affairs. I think that tells us quite a bit, actually, doesn't it? It's quite concise and to the point. Congratulations, whoever the hell wrote that. Right, let's talk credits. And we have a pilot title of White Party, a pilot synopsis that says, Doc fights chemistry problems created by Donald's favoritism and harassment. We have an episode length of 49 minutes and a series length of 6 episodes, I believe. The pilot episode, White Party, was directed by Kevin Bray, and Bray has directed episodes of Loot, Unprisoned, The Patient, Blackish, and Insecure. White Party was written by Gina Welch, who is also the series creator, and Welch has written episodes of Under the Banner of Heaven, Castle Rock, and Ray Donovan. In terms of cast, we first have Lawrence Fishburne, who plays Doc Rivers. Is that right? Fishburne? Fishborn? It could just be my pronunciation, but I'm not going to read too much into it right now. So, Fishburne has starred in the OG Matrix trilogy. He's also starred in Blackish, the John Wick franchise, and A Boys in the Hood. Next, we have Jackie Weaver, who plays Shelley Sterling, and Weaver has starred in Silver Linings Playbook, Yellowstone, and Grace Point. Cleopatra Coleman, great name, plays V. Stiavano, and Coleman has starred in Rebel Moon Part 1 and 2. She has my sympathies. Dope Sick, The Last Man on Earth, and she also had a stint on the Australian soap series Neighbours, which is very random. Unless she's Australian, I have no idea. And finally, on the selected cast list, we have Ed O'Neill, who plays Donald Sterling. And O'Neill is likely known to most for starring on Modern Family, but he's also starred in The Bone Collector and The West Wing. Now, the pilot also stars Kelly O'Coin, J. Alphonse Nicholson, Sarunas J. Jackson, Austin Scott, and Charlie McLeaven. And yes, Clipped is an FX program, but in the UK, you can watch it on Disney+. And as a reminder, even though it was in the series synopsis, the series Clipped is in fact based on a podcast, The Sterling Affairs, by Ramona Shelburne. Shelbourne? No, let's not start this again. Okay, now I've never heard of the podcast, but I do love the fact that different forms of adaptations are starting to emerge. And it's good to know that it's there should one want to listen to it before the series, after the series, or instead of the series. Now, in terms of why I watched Clipped, I actually hadn't intended to watch anything this week because there was nothing on that I was interested in or had access to. But I ended up putting a poll out on Instagram as to whether I should skip this week or watch something that I missed when it initially came out in favour of reviewing something else. And it was suggested that I check out Clipped. I think we can all agree I do way too many police dramas on this podcast. Okay, let us get into the pilot itself, starting with the first 10 minutes. Why the first 10 minutes, you wonder? Because it is our first foray into a brave new world, and the first 10 minutes should essentially entice us as the audience to keep exploring this new world and, not turn around and run back home. The first 10 minutes is a very important part of the pilot writing process, which is why I scrutinize it on the pod. So the first 10 minutes of White Party? Yeah, that's the one. So the first 10 minutes of White Party goes like this. So firstly, we are told explicitly that the following is based on real events. And then through a mixture of social media clips, memes, and news clips, we learn that some sort of scandal has broken surrounding the Clippers, an LA-based basketball team. Someone says, the tape is out. And we get the sense that something racist has been said by a rich white man and it has been leaked to TMZ. We also get a bit of voiceover over this initial opening brewingness which ends in the ominous line, "Some teams sell success, the Clippers sell hope." And then the clock rewinds to 2013 and we meet Doc Rivers, who has just arrived in LA as the new coach to the Clippers. We also meet Donald Sterling, the smarmy loudmouth club owner, and his miniskirt wearing designer bag carrying assistant, V. Doc is eager to get to work and pitches the team buying a player called JJ Redick. However, after a verbal agreement with the player, Donald changes his mind because he finds out that Redick is white. Yeah, Doc and Donald, or Donald Doc. Sorry, not sorry. So Donald and Doc have a massive blow up and then Doc quits. Now, apparently this is just some sort of test or pissing contest because 2 seconds later, Doc gets a call confirming that he can buy Redick for the team. And that's about the 9-minute mark, but I'll give you some context for the next scene too, because we are actually at the White Party, the pilot title references. And this is an annual party hosted by the Sterlings, and it is to launch the start of the season. And the party is hosted by Shelley Sterling, who is the Clippers co-owner and Donald's wife. Now, we learn a few things at this party. Donald treats his players inappropriately, some of the players hate each other, and Shelley is all too aware of V and her relationship with her husband. Now, as an intro, I'm not immediately sucked in. There were a lot of things flying at me in the first 2 minutes, and by that I mean like Instagram posts and news articles and then people in real life in different places, and it sort of really discombobulated me. Also, after watching the first 10 minutes, I'm not really rooting for anybody. I'm just sort of following these random individuals that have been placed in front of me. I will say that I am curious about V. I feel like she's a woman with a game plan, but that's about all I can gather from the first 10 minutes. And we will discuss further whether or not V actually does have a game plan as we move over to talking about the main characters. But there are quite a few, so I will try to keep this succinct but impactful, and we will start with Doc Rivers. So Rivers, Doc was previously coaching with one of the best teams in Boston, and he used to play for the Clippers way back when, and he's chosen to sort of come back and help put his former team on the map, sort of like a returning conqueror. The problem is, of course, that the Clippers are a team of big fat losers, and what Doc wants to do is to turn them into small, skinny winners. And it's funny because he clearly cannot stand Donald for good reason, but Doc clearly believes in what he's come to LA to do for the most part. And we do see in the pilot episode that his coaching technique is working, and that's both on the court and in the locker room. Ooh, that was nice. That was nice, wasn't it? It's like I almost know what I'm talking about. It's like I know sports things. Go me. Right, next character that we have to talk about is Donald Sterling. And someone in the episode describes him as neurovirus on a cruise ship, which I thought was absolutely hilarious. To the players and to Doc, Donald is the reason that the team/club isn't winning. And to his wife, Shelley, Donald is a cheetah pumpkin eater. And to his assistant what's the word? Oh, I can't remember the word. Let's just go with side chick. So to his assistant/side chick, V, Donald is a wallet, a walking wallet. So Donald seems to be completely oblivious to the fact that everybody finds him gross. But I suppose when you're rich, that just happens. I don't know. However, the only kind of shred of hope that we have that he isn't a complete and utter moron is that somebody in the episode says Donald knows what he's doing. After all, he built an empire. And I think it's quite interesting because even though Donald is at the center of the future scandal, I believe, he doesn't seem to be a prominent character in the pilot episode. Like, he's there and he's doing things, but he's like the only one without a plan and a focus and a purpose, whereas all the other characters have a goal and a want and a need, and so they stand out a lot more than this complacent old dude. Okay, next on the selected old cast list, we have Shelley Sterling, who is the co-owner of the Clippers. However, she is mostly reduced to wife and woman scorned. What's the female version of a cuckold? Is there one? I don't know. If I find out what that is, I will let you know. But V isn't the first assistant that Donald has taken a liking to, but she being V, is the first assistant to almost rub it in Shelley's face. And in a way, not that she should at all, but Shelley does give pushover energy, and she does talk in the pilot episode about how she's constantly ignored and underestimated. But by the end of the pilot episode, Shelley has had enough, and she suddenly remembers that she does in fact have claws. And what's quite interesting is once we see Shelley sort of step up, it does kind of now make me think maybe Donald is an absolute moron and he's just riding off the laurels of his smart-ass wife. He really wouldn't be the first to do so. Finally, on the selected character list, we have V. And V has a bunch of aliases that I can't remember, and she is a Donald assistant, and she's kind of having an affair with him. It's not necessarily outlined if it's a sexual affair though, but she definitely is quite happy to spend his money. I mean, she's literally driving a Ferrari that he paid for and living in a duplex that she made him buy. V is another one that I can't work out. She's definitely playing the long game, but what is the reason? She doesn't seem to have any altruistic motives. In the pilot episode, it's mentioned that she has foster sons and has a sister, and she wants to move them into this this duplex that she made Donald buy her, and for them to be in a good school district. But that doesn't seem as important to her as just living a lavish lifestyle. I mean, she's the kind of woman who is literally on Instagram all the time. She follows Kim Kardashian and I believe idealizes Kim Kardashian. And I'm just saying this from the way that she was staring at Kim Kardashian's Instagram page in the pilot episode. So yes, V wants to be seen. She wants to be known. She wants to have a following. She wants nice things. Weird flex though with V, she is recording all of the conversations that she has with Donald. Now she says it's to keep him consistent, but honestly it's reading like she's prepping for bribery. I mean, it's pretty easy to see how certain things could possibly have been quote unquote leaked to TMZ when we've got this woman recording everything that comes out of this racist man's mouth, you know? Having a think about dynamics with Donald Duck. Doc is definitely trying to force a level of decorum on Donald, who hasn't really noticed, and Donald doesn't really care about Doc, is basically what I'm getting from the two of these characters. Donald is, of course, in charge and will continue to throw his weight around and toss toys out of the pram when necessary, and Doc is either just going to have to deal with that or duck. Now, in terms of the dynamics between Shelley and V, I mean, I think it's weird for the mistress, that is the word I couldn't remember earlier. So I think it's weird for the mistress to flaunt so heavily in front of the wife, which is why when Shelley declares war on V, no part of me, even for a split second, feels sorry for V. I'm not going to lie, all in all, it's a bit of a weird foursome. And now it is time for a quick interlude to see what TV and film life is looking like beyond the pilot principle. And let's just whiz through the obvious. I know you are all dying to find out if I have finished The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro, and the answer is, of course, no. Don't be ridiculous. However, I do have less than 100 pages left, and if all goes well, then during the interlude of our next episode, you'll hear me saying that I finished the book and I've started a new one. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Now, in terms of film, I've only watched one film in the last week, and that is Bodies, 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 which is now available on Netflix UK. And I remember when it came out in cinema that I did want to go and see it at the time, but as it happens, I didn't, did I? But that's okay, because I've seen it now and it was fun. I did love how wild it got and how it all really stupidly escalated. And I get that it was almost a bit of a parody of the Gen Z culture, but also was it? Was it a parody? Or is that just what they're like? I can't say. I'm not Gen Z. I don't spend a lot of time with Gen Zs. Not that I wouldn't want to, I just haven't. So I cannot say how accurate the depiction of these characters were, but I had a good time. Ultimately, it was a fun movie. I liked the ending, but I will admit it was a little unnerving to watch at times because one of the characters kind of looks like me. So every time she was moving mad, I was like, stop it, me, stop moving mad. Okay, moving on to television, and I finished The Dead Boy Detectives. Now, I'm not here to necessarily recommend it to you because it's so mid, so very mid. But if you do need something to half pay attention to, then go for it. Now, I do have a few half started or one episode started shows, so I think I might try and watch episode 2 of Eric next, and I haven't watched episode 3 of The Responder, which I did finally press play on last week. So there are a few bits in the old "Are you still watching this, Jen?" list to get through. So we'll see what happens, because I think I'd rather clear a few of those first before I finally dive into Bridgerton Series 3. If you have made it this far, firstly, hello! Secondly, hit follow and give this podcast a rating. Don't forget you can also holler at me on Instagram Threads and Twitter/X at Pilot Principle. And if you're feeling adventurous, then come and find me on TikTok at A Writer of Sorts, where we can chat about the latest in film and TV and books. Now, in terms of what I liked about the pilot episode of Clipped White Party, there is a moment in the episode after the team, the Clippers, has won a match, a game, whatever. They've won their sports thing. And Donald Sterling bursts into the changing room with a gaggle of shareholders who are apparently used to a level of behind the scenes actions. But it's a bit much because the team are literally in the middle of changing/showering and they are treating them like zoo animals. It's honestly disgusting, but it's the perfect encapsulation of the problem with Donald Sterling, which so far has been hard to sort of put your finger on. This scene, though, also does make V look good to like a minor degree, because she says something like, "I told you we shouldn't be in here." But I mean, she doesn't say this until after Doc storms in and kicks out the shareholders in a sort of protective Papa Bear mode. Also, another thing I kind of like, not just about the pilot episode, but like about the series overall, is the title and its triple entendre meaning. Wow, that was very difficult to say. So in terms of the entendres of Clipped, we of course have the Clippers basketball team. Clippers, clipped, definitely something there. Next, we have V, who meticulously records audio snippets of Donald. And these audio snippets could possibly be clipped and sent off to TMZ. Clippets, if you will. And of course, finally, we have the clipping of balls as the poster for the series, kind of not so subtly references. So yes, very much enjoyed the triple entendre. On the flippity flip side, in terms of what I didn't so much like about the pilot episode, it's one of those things with me because I like to know whose story this is, and I don't really get that from the pilot episode. And yes, it can in fact be an ensemble, I know, but because there were a lot of haphazard things going on in the pilot episode, it would have been nice to have a more central chosen person to anchor it down. I did think that might have been Doc, but there were periods of time where he just disappeared from the episode entirely, so probably not. Another thing that I didn't so much like about the pilot episode is that Doc Rivers is obviously trying to build this team up, but we don't really get to see that happen. We don't get to see the graft. We don't get to see the hard, sweaty work, that goes into making this basketball team great. It's just done in a very quick, basic montage. And that was a bit disappointing. Okay, I think 2 will do, although I'm not going to lie, I probably could have given you 1 or 2 more examples of what I didn't so much like about the pilot episode. Now, before we get into the main question, let's rewind, not quite to 2013, but to the elements of this pilot episode, starting with the synopsis, which tells us Doc fights chemistry problems created by Donald's favoritism and harassment. I think that's a really good starting point for what happens in the pilot episode. But what actually goes on in the pilot episode is a lot more expansive than this. This pilot synopsis also focuses the story on the basketball element of the plot, which the pilot as a whole skims over. I think the writing in the pilot episode was fine. It was well acted. It's a good cast. I expect nothing less. In terms of the setting, I think you get the sense of it being 2013 with the use of memes to progress the story forward and emphasize story points. So that was cool. I mean, they even made the Instagram look 2013 old, which, you know, it's the details. We love little details like that. In regards to pace, pace. Do you know what? Pace was kind of inconsistent. Some scenes were really short, like when Doc recruits JJ Abrams? No. JJ something, the basketball player that Donald then flip-flopped on because he found out he was white. That recruitment scene was very, very short. Whereas later on, when we get to the white party, even though there are multiple facets to the scene that's supposed to keep it engaging, ultimately it feels really, really dragged out. In terms of the end of episode hook, Shelley decides, finally, to fight back against V's blatant disregard for her status as wife and club owner. Very important to remember that Shelley is not just a wife, she also owns half. I want half, Lucius. If you know, you know. If you don't know, apologies for the terrible impersonation. But we are not here to talk about Cookie Line. We are here to talk about Shelley Sterling, who decides to sue V for the duplex. Very important element of the pilot episode. The duplex that she got Donald to buy her. And yes, at the end of the episode, V is sitting in a toilet stall, crying her eyes out. However, it's kind of hard to feel sorry for a woman who earlier in the episode calls Shelley a witch, says something about being nothing but dust, and then blows in her face. Honestly, when I tell you I howled with laughter. I don't know if this is supposed to be a comedy, but that shit was hilarious. Finally, in terms of a serial arc, obviously all events are leading towards an eventual scandal breaking. So what is the scandal? Who leaks it? Why do they leak it? Etc, etc, etc. The Clippers team, I mean, I wouldn't quite call it a serial arc. Doc wants to get the team to the champions or something, but he needs to get them to win. But in the pilot episode, we see that they're winning and advancing up the leaderboard. So I don't know how much I would call that a serial arc, but I guess perhaps the, not fallout, but the impact of their winning streak could come into the serial arc. And finally, in terms of a serial arc, we saw how things ended with V, deservedly or otherwise. So how will that rivalry continue? And now there is only one question left to ask. Will I be continuing with Clipped? Pause for dramatic effect. You know, I kind of understand the appeal in trashy television because I kind of want to see how messy this shit is going to get. Even though I didn't love the plot, the storyline, or the characters from the pilot episode. I will say that you might like Clipped if you like reality TV, especially those housewife ones. Another reason you might like Clipped is if you liked the podcast, you know about the true story or are interested in the true story, but can't be bothered to listen to a podcast about it or read an article about it and kind of just want to veg out on the couch and watch a semi-fictionalized version of events. On the flippity flip side, you might not like Clipped if you are expecting something a little more sports heavy. Not gonna lie, I was expecting to understand a little bit more about basketball from watching this, but I don't think that's gonna happen. And the second reason you might not like Clipped is if you like your storylines and characters a little bit more explicit. And by that, I just mean the lines are drawn on who they are and where things are going. Because you don't even have to know where it's going. You just have to feel like you're on the journey to that discovery. Yeah, that makes sense. Basically, I am undecided if I will be watching another episode of Clipped, but for the purposes of being cut and dry, I am going to give this a pass. or whatever sports equivalent analogy would be relevant here. But I'm not finished. I still need to give the pilot episode of Clipped White Party a pilot score, and I will be giving it a 2 out of 5, which is being generous. Now, we only get the idea of one character, and that is Doc. We're teased about sports, but don't actually get any sports. No one in the pilot episode is very likable. I mean, even Shelley, who I feel like we should be rooting for, not quite there yet. I mean, I felt a little bit of a something in her direction at the end of the episode where she started finally acting like a boss-ass bitch, but ultimately not quite there yet. Another reason why it gets the low score of 2 is that there is no sense of time in the pilot episode. We know that the team, or Doc would like for the team to win a championship. We know time is passing, but if you don't know basketball, it's not well signposted. For example, the White Party is hosted at the start of the season. When is that? I'm not a complete sports novice. I know about NFL. I know the NFL season starts in October. Is that when's the preseason? I'm not helping matters here, but the point is we don't have a sense of time, which I think has a negative impact on the plot overall, because we know we are running down to when this TMZ story breaks. However, what the pilot did well was impose on us the looming fear of what gets leaked to TMZ, especially with the knowledge that V is recording everything that Donald Sterling is saying, and he does in fact say some pretty wild shit. Now that we have hashed out the fundamental principles, will you be giving the pilot episode a watch? Or are you watching new episodes weekly as they are being released on Disney Plus UK? Follow and chat to me over on Threads, Instagram and Twitter /X at Pilot Principle, and I will catch you, throw you, ball, net. Do you know what? Never mind. That was a poor attempt to find something basketball related to tie up this episode, but I'll just catch you on the next one.